Hi, I'm John, and I'll do more of that in a minute. I'm going to skip over that. What we're going to talk about tonight, and I'm diving straight into this because I am not a professional, and because I like to live dangerously, I have no notes. So I've done this before, it will be different. Cool. I'm going to be talking about building a serverless podcasting workflow because obviously I have a podcast. Look at me. I work in tech and look at me. I have a podcast. It was in a shed at one point too. We're going to talk about the problem that we were trying to solve. We're going to talk about the idea that I think I had, or maybe my boss over there had, or one of us had. I'm claiming credit though. Unexpected help from AWS, because amazingly that happened. The workflow, but different because I did it twice. The pachyderm in the corner, mostly because I like the word pachyderm, and I promise there's pictures of elephants. Challenges, next steps, and tips. But before we go into that, I should tell you who I am. Some of you know who I am, most of you don't, and I envy you because you don't know me. Hi, I'm John Goodall, not Topper, because I have more hair. Oh no, you don't have it by choice, I think, down the sides there. I'm lead cloud engineer at Logicata, and I will tell you a teeny tiny bit about them in a minute, but if you really want to know more, talk to that man in the grey t-shirt over there with our logo on it, because he's my boss. I'm a recently renewed community builder in the serverless category. Any other CBs in the room? I see one. Any more? Hey, good, there's some. And I am the co-founder, along with my boss, of a different user group, which is smaller but better.
Also nearer where I live.
And nearer where I live, yeah. So there's that. And honestly, I did that because I got tired of having to come up here listening to him just so I could have tech talks. So, you know, now they come to me, but it's somehow more work. Kind of didn't work out. And because I love a QR code, that's my link tree. I promise there's nothing dodgy on there. It's not one of those all my links with random things. Oh, don't click that. It's just the user group and my LinkedIn. And we have our own YouTube channel where we don't say the schmartzy word because we're afraid of getting banned. I'm going to give everyone 2 seconds to scan that and then I'm going to move on. I can show you it later. This is Logicata. That's the firm I work for. That's our recently renewed strapline. Is we make web apps work on AWS. And we haven't recently been bought, so we don't have people for things, I'm afraid. So people are me. We build, operate, optimize, and modernize AWS infrastructure for web applications. And if you want to know more about that, buy me beer or ask him. So we had a problem. Well, the problem was we gave ourselves a problem. Every week we need to, for this podcast, pick the articles, and ideally read them, but between you, me, and the internet, I don't. I kind of pick them on the basis of I can talk about them without reading them. Seems to work. Share them with the guest, answer any questions that they might have, record the episode, because, you know, otherwise what's the point? Download the files, because again, what's the point? Convert them into the correct formats, because Spotify is really, really awkward and fussy, and not everything plays nicely with everything else, and things come out in different formats, and I don't like Spotify. Create trailer, because, you know, why not? Create a summary that we could put on all of the podcast platforms. It's the show notes, if you're unfamiliar with the parlance. Upload to the publishing platform, do some social promo, because, you know, otherwise we're just shouting into the void and nobody knows we've done it, so we shout into the void, but on LinkedIn. And we'd like to create some clips, again, just to shout at people on LinkedIn. Do a long-form blog post that isn't just a transcript because we like content reuse. It's not a huge amount of work to put the podcast out, if I'm really honest. It's a few hours a week for a couple of people, and then we have a very good marketing assistant that helps us as well. But we'd like to get as much content as we can out of said handful of hours a week for 3 people. And add full subtitles to each video, because there's this weird thing where no one on LinkedIn watches with audio, so you kind of need to subtitle everything. I think it's because they're hiding when they're, you know, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm doing something for the company. Nah, you're skiving off. So we had an idea. Could we outsource it? I mean, yeah, but we're cheap and it costs money, so we didn't really want to do that. Could we automate it? I mean, yeah, but we're cheap and it costs money. But in my head, my time's free, so I sort of started doing that. And not all the tools that we use play nicely with each other. This is kind of the Spotify problem as well, and you have to kind of download and upload things from place to place, and there's FTP servers, and it's just all a complete mess. So I did some research, which is, weird because I'm an engineer and we don't research. You know, days of coding can save hours of reading. But I did some research, and it turns out it's reasonably well trodden. This is a little bit out of date now because there's been some updates, but if you're unfamiliar, that's Werner Vogel's blog, and he kind of went, record it, put it through a thing, transcribe it, get some notes. Great idea. And then they did it again. I don't know why that's the Indian version of the website. That's the one that I found it on. And it gets better because AWS actually did a sample for me. And I went, ooh, that'll work. I had an example project. You can't find that anymore because it's been deprecated. It's been replaced with something that has guardrails and new Bedrock features. But if you go into the blog, you can find it. So with a bit of tinkering, a bit of research, and I sat in a Costa for 4 hours because I had nothing better to do and didn't want to be at home, I built that. Can you see that at the back? I don't know if the internet can see that very well, but you can possibly see that. If you really want pictures of it, I mean, take pictures of puppies or something. Jesus, that's boring. Cool. It's quite a lot going on there. So I thought, because you know you're here, we'll talk about it. And I've not zoomed it in at all because I hate you. We start the start. What do we do? So we record the episode. I get an M4A file out of our current platform, and I whack that in an S3 bucket because why not? You know, it kicks the process off because you can trigger things out of S3, and it's reasonably easy to do, easy to subscribe to, well understood. Lots of people do it. Triggers the workflow, sends details about the file, not with any of the cool new metadata stuff because this predates that, weirdly. We kind of trim the inputs a bit. I say we, it does it, I made it. We extract the bits that we care about because you get all of that shmoo, which is quite a lot, and we actually only care about kind of that bit. So we dump a load out of it because I don't care about most of it. I only care about that stuff. It makes it easier to deal with. We kick off a job in Media Convert, which, if you're unfamiliar, is transcoding as a service that actually isn't deprecated anymore because Elastic Transcoder is dead and you shouldn't use it. Elemental Media Convert is, you know, better. I did pre-prepare the template. I'm sorry I didn't do it in IAC. I'm not building it in the Python because I just couldn't be bothered. Kicks out an MP3 from the M4A, sticks it in a different bucket because we need that to keep Spotify happy with us. And then we start transcribing it. And again, we use Amazon Transcribe because, well, that's the one that you're meant to use for transcription. Yeah. It's one of those AI things from before it was cool. So it transcribes it, spits out a nasty JSON document, which we sort of tidy up a bit later. But that's an async process, and this is orchestrated rather than choreographed. So we sit there and we loop because, I don't know, I like killing DevOps fairies, I think. We sit there and we wait for transcribe, we get the status, we go round and round and round. It takes 3 or 4 minutes. But I wanted to do orchestration rather than choreography because I could get a pretty picture out of that, and it didn't involve, you know, using X-ray and stuff for traces. Once that's completed, we proceed. If it failed, we bomb out, send me an error and go, oh, you did it wrong, which doesn't happen very often, but, you know, once in a while. And if it's progressing, we just kind of go around again. And then we have what I've inventively called the AI bit, because I know how to name things. We format the transcription because it comes out in a big ugly JSON thing, and that's quite hard to parse, and I don't like it. We throw that into Bedrock with a bunch of prompts. Now we're storing these prompts at the minute in DynamoDB because it was quick, easy, and the example that I worked with only had a single prompt, and at the time when I was building this, Prompt Manager didn't exist. It does now, but it didn't then. So DynamoDB. And we have 4 prompts that kind of do various things. You know, we want the title, and we want a blog post, and we want a joke, and we want a couple of other bits and pieces. So we have a prompt for each thing, because having one mega prompt for doing all of that would just not work. Once we've got the output, we chuck that in a text file, stick it back in the same S3 bucket, because, I don't know, I just did, but in different folders. If that's worked, then we go, yay, it worked, and we send the recording on. If it failed, we bomb out and shout at me again. That did happen quite a bit, and I'll go on to that in a minute. Failure path is kind of meh. It sends a failure message and then sends a process failed state. And this is a quirk of step functions. Because the model status is a did it pass or did it fail, the failure is sort of eaten, for lack of a better term. And then the send failure message state comes through as a pass. So even though the process has fallen over and someone needs to go and look at it, it's not rerunnable unless you force it to fail, which is nasty and I hate it, but that's what it is. And then at the end, we have a success state because, yeah, another quirk, you can't end on a parallel state directly. You have to end both branches and then end the whole thing. So we have a pass state at the end just to kind of end it. And yes, that costs us money because you pay in a standard workflow per transition, but we're not paying because we stay in the free tier, so I don't care. Now we're going to go through the list again because I like crossing things out on a list. So here's the problem. Did we auto pick the articles? Nah, no we didn't. Did we share them with the guests automatically and answer their question? No. No. Did we record the episode automatically? Well, no. No. Did we download the files? Also no. Did we convert them into the correct format? Yeah, we did. So that's good. We're at 1 out of 5 so far. Did we make the trailer? No, but we did kind of find a third-party tool that does this for us, and I'm sort of calling that a half win because we outsourced it. Did we create a summary? Yeah, we did. That one was pretty good. It was good enough for a creative to sort of take that summary, translate it into something that was sort of SEO friendly and human readable and go from there. Didn't upload automatically, didn't do the social promo, didn't do the short clips, but we found another third-party service that did that, so I sort of stopped caring. It kind of did the blog post, but I'm saying no because we were using Claude 2 at the time, because again, that's all that existed, and the content was crap. It was it was complete cack. You just couldn't use it. And we didn't add subtitles to the video either, but the clips were getting subtitles from this third-party service, so I sort of stopped worrying about that as well. But that's not a great first attempt, if we're honest. But, you know, for 4 hours in a Costa, I'm taking the win. There were some problems, as I sort of alluded to. It's really, really incredibly fragile. It would just fall over on a whim, I think. If anyone's old enough to get the stray alpha particle reference from, I think it was Oracle, it was, yeah, the phases of the moon would cause this damn thing to break. And we'd get rate limited constantly, and it was just not a fun time. Transcription, that's quite expensive as well. Turns out when you throw 30, 40, 50 minutes of audio file into transcribe, that does cost a few dollars, which, okay, it's not a big amount of money. We're only doing it 4 times a week, but you know, in the scheme of things for this workflow, that was far and away the most expensive thing. And we had to restart from the beginning on error because I'm an idiot and didn't build proper error handling. And that annoyed me. And it was slow, nothing really doing there. It's just slow. Bedrock takes a while to run things with massive inputs, and the transcription takes 5 minutes because it's a massive file and so on and so on. So we wanted to update the model because in the space of when I built this to sort of 6 months later at reInvent, because I kind of built it in the May time, and then within 6 months we'd gone from Claude 2 being the latest and greatest from Anthropic to, I think we had all of the subversions of 3 and then some 3.5 V1 and V2s, and now they come out with Claude 4 as well, which I'm not using, but you know, there'd been absolute loads of them just from Anthropic within Claude, and there'd been all the Titan stuff and loads of other stuff. So we wanted to update the model to use something a bit better. They say more intelligent. We don't like that word for models. I think more capable, but you know, whatever. Wanted to use Prompt Manager because that was then a thing, and you know, use the tool that you're meant to use. I wanted to fix that nasty loop that I'd put because there was a bunch of them, but specifically the one where I was downloading the prompts from Dynamo and then running them in that one Lambda because that was a source of problems. And generally make it less fragile and error report better and so on and so on. And I wanted the file conversion result to come to me rather than me have to go and find the job, look at it up, grab it from S3 directly. I wanted to just sort of go, oh, it's here, go get it. And that kind of was a bit of a bugbear as well. So yeah, pictures. I kind of had that in my head. I will admit I made that diagram for the talk rather than ahead of time because my enthusiasm for research sort of waned somewhat. So I sat on the floor outside a thing at reInvent just sort of making things, and I did this after the fact. But that was sort of the idea, right? We wanted to sort of split branches out, do a bit more on the transcoding side of things, and ideally we wanted to, you probably can't see that, we wanted to parallelize the prompts so that I could run sort of all 4 or 5 of them at the same time and not have to wait around for them. I didn't really get there though. It looks a bit different, and yes, as of last week, that version of the document is now out of date because they've changed the interface, but I didn't bother updating my presentation. If ever I do this again, I might do. But that's what it started to look like afterwards. And it's a bit bigger and it sort of does what I intended it, but not quite. We'll walk through it again just because, you know, that's why I'm here. This first bit is exactly the same. We still throw the thing into S3, we still do the input trimming, we kick off media convert, but I hang on to the ID this time so I can actually go and do something with it later. I wasn't before. Let me kick off the transcription, but that's exactly the same. Then I jump into the parallel state, which if you've seen a step functions diagram before, you'll know that I had a parallel state, but I wasn't really doing anything with it, so I was paying an extra transition for that, but again, free tier, so I didn't care. Then I jump into the transcoding side of things. So we have another one of these step functions loops, and I abuse the hell out of these because I worked out several years ago how to do them the hard way without reading any of the documentation. So I tend to do them too much, I think, as a compensatory mechanism. Again, though, it's the same sort of loop. We wait for the media conversion and we do lots of waiting and murder lots of DevOps fairies. Once that's done and it dumps that into S3, I just create a pre-signed URL for the file in S3 and then shout that at me in Slack so I can just go and paste it in and download it, and that's a bit quicker. On the other side of things, in the LLM side, that's exactly the same. You know, I'm not doing anything different there. That worked, so okay, fine. It could be a bit quicker, admittedly, but transcribe takes a while, so I don't care if I'm waiting an extra 30 seconds or whatever, doesn't really matter. Then we format the transcription, which is exactly the same again. It's just this JSON document is ugly and horrible and hard to interpolate, so we clean it up a bit. And then I get the prompts. As opposed to doing that at the point where we're invoking the Bedrock model, I do it here, so I get all 4 or 5 of them from Dynamo, you know, however many there happen to be, and then pass them down, right, in a nice big object. Still coming from DynamoDB, not Prompt Manager, because I was doing this in the evenings because I desperately needed to get some content for Community Builder renewal, so I had to finish it quite quickly and then write a blog post about it. So that kind of fell by the wayside because I was running out of time for renewal. And if you do it just before renewal, they get a bit snippy because, you know, fair enough, but I was running out of time. I'm not using the direct SDK integration for Dynamo because I couldn't be bothered to work that one out, and Lambda Power Tools for Python just does that for you. It's about 2 lines, so whatever. Have another iterator, because like I say, I'm sure this is a coping mechanism for something, and I abuse the hell out of these, but yeah, another loop, and what we do every time round, we run the first prompt out of the list, we send the output directly to SNS, not using the direct integration, and I'll have a thing on that in a minute, just out of the Lambda directly, drop the prompt from the list, and then wait. And why are we waiting? Well, we're waiting because it turns out we weren't being rate limited on Bedrock because we were using an ancient model. I mean, we were, but that wasn't the problem. It turns out the rate limits for Bedrock are incredibly low. It's something like 1 invocation a minute, and that's all you can have. And we were hitting invocations per minute, and we were hitting token limits and all sorts. So I just have this arbitrary wait just to make sure I time out all of my rate limits, because this doesn't pay Amazon enough money for me to ask for a limit increase, and I'm fairly sure most of them are hard limits anyway. So we just kind of wait that time out. We have removed a couple of things here, if you notice. The first thing is, like I say, we've got rid of the direct SDK integration for the SNS results because that's just spewing straight out of the Lambda because it was just easier. I don't have the end on error state, and that's quite handy because it means I can redrive this from failure as opposed to having to restart from the beginning, because there's no dump out and fail and then the whole thing's failed. It just sort of sits there. Step 8 on both branches, I do still have this kind of end success quirk because, you know, you've got to finish both branches and then clean them up. And how is V2 better? Well, V2 is a bit better because we're dropping the URL into Slack, so I don't have to go and look for it because, you know, looking for things, who does that? I want it to shout at me so I can go and get it. Or in future so that I can have it sent to, say, our marketing person who does a lot of this for us as well these days, and you can go and download it and I don't have to worry about that, which would be, you know, infinitely better. We can run a nearly unlimited number of prompts. I say unlimited, it's functionally unlimited because I can't think of enough prompts to use up my DynamoDB storage quota. So as far as my brain is concerned, it's an unlimited number of prompts because we're not getting rate limited and we're not stuck within that 15-minute Lambda execution timeout and all that jazz. And yeah, we're much less affected by rate limits. It happens once in a while. We don't hit the invocations per minute rate limit, but we do occasionally hit token rate limits because, as you can imagine, if you're throwing a transcript of 30, 40, 50 minutes of podcast for 3 people, that's quite a lot of words, and we will occasionally hit that limit, but you know, it's not so common. And as I said, we can redrive from the point of failure because that's when that was announced. I was very happy because it meant I could be very lazy and just go, start from there again. And the outputs from the newer model are much, much, much better, to the point where they're actually usable by and large. You know, first time around they were middling at best, the ones that we could use. Now we can use basically all of them all of the time, right? And I'll show you some of the stuff that we're doing with that in a bit. And we have some monitoring. Now this is technically a production workload, and I know on the event it's billed as a production workload, and in my about this talk it's production. It's a marketing project. Like, we're not going to lose any money from it if it sort of breaks on us, but we have some monitoring, which means if it does go bang, it will shout at me and I can go and fix it, as opposed to having to sit there watching it, which is, you know, a better use of my time. I'm going to go back to this list again, and I'm sorry, this is an artifact of what I was told by AWS to do at the summit, which was to keep reinforcing the problem to begin with and keep going back to, you know, tell the same story over and again. So I'm sorry, but we're going to do this again. No, I still have to pick them. No, I still have to share them. We still have to record the episode, although maybe not at some point. With the rate some of these models are going, I might be able to just put AI John in and pretend. I don't know. I'd hate to do the training on my personality, though. I think I'd probably break something. Download the files, sort of. I'm calling that one yes, because whilst I still have to download it, I don't have to go and look for it, and I'm calling that a win. We're already doing that one. Trailer, as I say, we're not doing that here, but we sort of stopped caring because we have a third-party tool for that. Summary we were doing already, but they're a lot better. They're a lot better, and they're basically useful now, and they were kind of rubbish before. Upload to the publishing platform, no, but again, that's sort of I'd like to do it, but our publishing platform has an FTP interface, not APIs. These files are very big, and since then I got fiber broadband, so I don't care, because it takes about 2 minutes for me to do the whole thing. So I cared a lot more when I had 70 meg, but now I have a gig, so I care a lot less. Social promo, no, that's not being done automatically, but I don't know how to describe it. Our very lovely marketing assistant does a lot of this for us now, so that's fine. Short clips, still third-party thing. We do now have a long-form blog post, and I'm going to show you kind of an example of that in a minute as well. It's not just a transcript, it is generative. We do call it out that it's AI generated, but it means that every week we get a new thing on our blog, which was a little bit unloved, and, you know, SEO biases for new content. So we have something new on there every week, which is great. And we don't have full subtitles, but like I say, we're not posting the full video to places where that really matters. We'd love to do it for accessibility and something for the future. So that's kind of what the blog sort of looks like now. You can see that it's very regularly just, here's the AI bot, and you can see on the left-hand side there, it's all done by AI. We call it out as it's done by the AI bot. The YouTube embed is the recording of us doing it, so you can kind of see it. We don't do the poly overview type thing because it's just lots of different ways to consume not quite the same content. It's, you know, different but similar, and you can consume it in whatever way works for you. I did promise a pachyderm. Oh, no, I did. See, there's a cute little baby elephant there. See, lots of pictures of animals. The pachyderm in the corner, elephant in the room, third-party tools. And this is kind of a, yes, this is great, you built this, but why don't you just go and use this tool or that tool or this thing that my mother's brother's sister's cow made, or, you know, whatever. Since we started, they've come a very, very long way. When I first started doing this, they kind of didn't exist. And because this is a marketing project and this isn't my day job, by day I deal with YAML mostly. This takes me a while to get around to doing, and they've come a long way since then. They're still not cheap though. I mean, one of the tools that we have looked at and that we've been recommended is Descript or Descript. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'd say Descript, but I don't know. It's quite expensive at the tier that we really want to use for this, and you don't really get any control of the prompts or the models. It's just right click, blog post. And okay, they're reasonably good, but you don't really have any control. And if you want to do something other than what's in that list, you can't do it. You still got to go and do all this stuff yourself. And paying a subscription fee wouldn't get me on stage. I mean, let's be honest here. We only do this to talk about it afterwards, don't we? No. What's next? So, yeah, I want to offload the transcription and the conversion because those are the most expensive bits and not really where the value from this is coming, because transcriptions can be done, again, by third-party tools, and if you've ever been on a Teams call, one I feel for you, but you can turn on recording and transcription and it does it live. So these are sorts of things that can be done elsewhere for cheaper. And the conversion, again, it's not expensive per se, but it's one of those bits of, That's not really where the value of this is. If we can just get the file coming out in the right format from day one, then that would be better. You know, the value is really in the content that we're creating rather than this kind of heavy lifting bits around the side. I do want to update it to use the Converse API, because at the minute it's just using the implementation of the kind of Claude one within Bedrock, and I'd like to use Converse because that way I don't have to look at it and change it every single time I want to change the model. And equally, I could do something quite clever in the loop and sort of say, for this prompt I want to use that model, and for this prompt I want to use the other model, because that's what you're meant to do. And at the minute we can't do that. I want to use Prompt Manager because I wanted to use that from, you know, as soon as it existed, and I haven't had a chance to do it. And the reruns are still manual. Yeah, I know, retries are a thing, and I want to do that. What did we learn? Well, we learned some things. The first is I should probably stick to writing Terraform. Really? My Python is appalling. I should stick to not doing that, and that's why I'm paid. It was a lot of work, as I say, because it's not my day job. It was in the evenings. It was a lot more work than I kind of set out for it to be. I thought, a couple of hours, it would be all right. It wasn't. A couple of hours, and it wasn't all right. LLMs change, particularly, you know, foundation models, they change quickly and often. From version 1 to version 2, there was about 6 different ones just within the Claude family. Recently, they've released 2 more, and the naming scheme is now worse than the USB naming scheme, so I lose track. But there's loads just within Claude, and there's a whole bunch of other ones, and the Nova models have come along, and so on and so on, and they change very quickly. They can be a bit non-deterministic. That's getting better. That is getting better, but in the early days, we would run the same thing twice and get fundamentally different outputs, and that was quite difficult. But they're getting better. The Bedrock rate limits, as I said earlier, are frustratingly low. Like, I get it. On the one hand, I do, because everybody and their mum wants to use it. Well, my mum doesn't, but everybody wants to use it, so you have to protect the system. But that annoys me. I assume you can learn some stuff from me, us. That's like why you're here, I guess, unless you're here for Danilo afterwards. First thing I'd say is do some workshops. I kind of dove into this head first. Okay, I did a bit of research, but I sort of dove into this, and the things I was struggling with more than anything else was the terminology and just understanding what I was supposed to be even searching for. So go do some learning, go do some workshops, and that doesn't include listening to me. I've just stood here and prattled on for half an hour. Test your prompts. That does sound a bit obvious, really, but when you think about it, yeah, go test them, do them in Party Rock or in Bedrock in the console or something, rather than going, I wonder if I just tweak this word slightly in your whole massive workflow and rerun the whole thing, because, you know, that's a bad time. Try and do a model evaluation. If you're unfamiliar with them, again, do some workshops, learn about them. When I first started doing this, we just used Claude 2 because that's what the example I was working from used, and it's kind of all that was available that had the token limits. But I know that now. I didn't know that at the time. I just kind of dove into it, and that was probably a mistake. I should probably have understood why I was using it, and therefore I can kind of learn a bit more that way. Requesting model access early. This bit me as well. It doesn't take very long to get them approved, as it well, I think that's the right word, but if they're not AWS models, they're not instantly approved when you ask for them, and they're not already there. So you have to go into Bedrock, you have to go into the model catalog, I think it is. You have to then go and say, yes, I'd like to use this model, that model, the other model, and then they don't come through immediately. So do that ahead of time. It doesn't take very long, but when you sort of change a model or first deploy something, go, you're not allowed to use that model. You what? And you have to wait 15 minutes for it to get approved, and that's really annoying. Check your rate limits. Obviously, I've gone on about them a little bit, and just make sure that, you know, if you are getting errors, that's something that you've taken account of. Be aware of time, which I'm aware of time, but be aware of time because these things take a while, particularly if, like me, you don't do this for a day job, if you're not a developer by trade, if you don't do AI all the time. These things take a long time, okay? They do, and you just have to be a bit gentle with yourself. Learn by doing. I've said this repeatedly. I like using the word waffle. If I can get waffle on a slide, I'll do it. Don't just listen to me. Go build a thing, you know. But yeah, Finn, more animals. That's it. Questions?
One question, maybe two.
I don't know. How long was your waffle?
Yeah, that's fine. As a reminder, question is 1 or 2 sentences with a question mark at the end. Do you occasionally have to remind people of that? I saw a hand go up. Is it coming down because it's more than 2 sentences? Speak into the weird cube.
First of all,
Speak into the
Speak
cube.
into the top of the cube.
Yeah, really nice. So thank you very much for presenting. And it's awesome. Let's see that you did all this platform using serverless. So I'm assuming that you are not managing any services, servers, or anything like that. And my question is regarding how much human review have you, if you added any, you did after generating all this content, like the summary, the blog post? Did it require a lot of human review, or do you think that was almost like ready to be published?
Repeat the question for the recording.
Yeah, so I have to, for the benefit of the internet, for the benefit of the internet, it was a great talk and he loved it. But the question was around human review from the outputs, okay? And the answer is yeah, a bunch. The outputs don't get published directly because sometimes it's quite good at removing the filler words like the ums and the ers and the and the funny noises that people make, and sometimes it's really terrible at doing it. So all of the outputs do go to our very lovely marketing person that kind of does all the publishing and stuff for us. Sometimes it's a lot better, sometimes it's a lot worse. If we or go if quite a lot, then it will struggle, kind of trimming those. But yeah, some and some. But it all goes through a human.
But it's mostly just name spelling and getting the capitalization right on AWS product names.
Again, for the benefit of the internet, because you can't hear my boss, which I know he lives in my head rent-free, I think.
He's paying you for that. It's not entirely rent-free.
He's not paying me
It's
now.
not in the contract.
May as well be. Again, for the benefit of the internet, the point was most of the corrections are around spelling names right, because I'm John, but I don't have an H in that. He's Carl, but it's with a K. It's that kind of thing that gets corrected quite a lot.
Can't you set rules to fix that?
Can we set rules to fix that? Yeah, I could probably do it in the prompt if I could be bothered.
But we have a different guest every week whose name is different, so you can't set a rule for that.
All right, one at a time. If you haven't got the weird box that you can talk into, you're not asking a question.
Didn't we do this in primary school?
Yeah, we did this in primary school. It was a while ago, though. If you have a question, stick your hand up. Down the bottom there. You have to be able to catch the box as well. There we go. It's almost a better round of applause than John got for his talk.
Yeah, so right after the last question, actually, you're using Bedrock, I suppose, the parent LLM.
Carl, shut up, I can't hear the question.
If you use the Bedrock flow with regular expressions, the libraries for the regular expressions, it limits the capacity to make mistakes with names.
This doesn't sound like a question. This sounds like a comment.
Please, have at it.
The other thing I did have is when I looked at your data flow diagram,
Yeah.
okay, and it went to success. He never said, when he went to success or before success, he never went back to start. Something went wrong. Everything was just going normal for you, until you went to success. I never saw a point in
That's still not a question.
Repeat the question if you can find one.
I think the question was, why does it end on success and then just finish? Because with step functions you handle errors differently, and I haven't done it properly.
Cool. I think that's probably all the questions we have time for on that talk.
Christ.
John's going to be around drinking more beer. And
I've only
eating
had
later.
one.
Yeah, that's why you're on first. If you
You're
have
buying.
further questions, you can ask John that. So another round of applause for John.